If you've never photographed a wedding in sub-freezing weather, then you cannot possibly know if you're ready for your next bitter cold wedding day.
So today we are sharing our 5 tips for how to best photograph a freezing cold wedding day.
But before we jump into that, we want to introduce ourselves.
I'm Hunter.
And I'm Sarah.
And we're Hunter and Sarah Photography, a husband and wife professional wedding photography team.
But we're also educators, and our goal is to help photographers to build strong foundations in both their businesses and their personal lives so that they can run profitable and sustainable photography businesses.
So before we jump into this week's content, we did want to let you know one last time that last month we finished up a post-production secrets video series. So that was our entire method of how we handle a wedding day after we've shot the wedding, from downloading the photos on our computer all the way through culling, editing, and delivering them to our clients. So if you haven't checked that out, check it out here.
Yeah. Also, if you aren't already a member, be sure to join our free Facebook community, Mastering the Wedding Photography Biz with Hunter and Sarah. But anyways, on to this week's content.
So anyone who lives on the East Coast of the United States like we do knows that one of the best and sometimes worst parts of living in this part of the country and this part of the world are the seasons, right? The kind of variety of weather throughout the year and the changing of the seasons makes life really interesting. But it also means that in one town, we can have summer days that are well over 100 degrees, and we can have winter days where the temperatures never get above freezing. And literally, we have shot weddings in both of those conditions and just about everywhere in between.
Yeah. So even though winter weddings aren't super common in like the mid-Atlantic region, we do still shoot a handful of weddings each year between December and February. And if you've got a bitter cold wedding day coming up, you will want to be prepared. So here's our first tip.
So tip number 1 is set expectations with your couple.
Yeah. At the risk of repeating ourselves, especially if you saw our videos on rainy wedding days and hot wedding days, most conflict, whether it's with your partner, your business partner, or your customers, comes from missed expectations. So having an intentional conversation with your couple can ensure that everyone is on the same page going into a cold wedding day.
Yeah, at minimum, you're gonna wanna at least gauge their comfort level with the cold, right? Because there's a big difference between a day that's calling for 45 degrees and a day that's calling for 25 degrees. So thankfully, unlike hot wedding days, usually if a couple books a date between December and February, they already know it's going to be cold. They're expecting it to be cold. So usually the wedding day is already at least mostly or entirely inside already.
Yeah. However, if your couple was holding out for an outdoor ceremony or a reception underneath a tent, but it looks like the weather is going to be freezing, you should find out if they're going to be equipping guests with blankets, maybe renting some heaters, or if they've just decided to move the ceremony and everything else indoors.
And even if the whole day is inside, you still want to gauge their interest as far as, being outside for portraits goes. But kind of similar, but actually I guess more unlike hot wedding days, a cold wedding day, we will still use that in and out strategy that we talked about a couple weeks ago, right? So, and this is, by the way, even more true if the day is windy, right? If you've ever been outside on a 35-degree day, kind of just above freezing, but there's no wind and the sun is out, it can actually feel kind of pleasant if you're dressed okay. But even if it's like 45 degrees well above freezing, if the wind is whipping and there's no sun, it is going to feel absolutely bitter cold.
Yeah. So on days like these, we want to pull our couple, maybe their wedding party or their family out to briefly take advantage of the natural light and then pull them back inside to warm up. We'll also be sure to, when we're outside, have our assistant holding, heavy coats at the ready. So if we walk to another spot or if we just pause for a moment between shots, our couples can throw their heavy coats back on and retain just like some of their body heat.
And it also leads to some really funny behind the scenes photos like this one. When our bride Jenny realized that it was easier to slip the jacket on backwards because of her veil, and then was flailing her arms around, and we all had a good laugh on this wedding day. But
and now, like we pointed out a few weeks ago, the in and out strategy means we'll either need to, 1, work more efficiently, 2, take fewer photos, or 3, we need to add more time to the timeline. So when we get on the phone or email with our couple ahead of their cold wedding day, we want to know whether they'd prefer to prioritize staying warm or prioritize just maximizing their photography.
Now, tip number 2 is how you then actually prepare for a cold wedding day.
Mm-hmm. There are thankfully a couple things that you can do ahead of a freezing wedding day to prepare. If your couple decides that they want to prioritize staying warm, do some research and find out if there are any spots at their venue where you can get great natural light while staying inside.
And if you can't find anything online, make sure you do plan to arrive just a little while early at the venue.
Which you should do anyways.
True, yes, every wedding day, but especially on a cold wedding day where you might need to scope out an indoor portrait location. Now, obviously, if they said they want to prioritize staying warm and they're not really interested in going outside, that means you're going to have to find an indoor space to do the majority of their portraits. But even if they're in for the kind of in and out strategy, maybe you just bring them into this spot while they warm up, do a few portraits, pull them back outside, continue the natural light portraits. But either way, you're going to want to know of at least a spot or two where you can get some decent light.
Also, if snow is in the forecast for their wedding day, or if there's fresh snow on the ground that morning, make sure that you plan to arrive, extra early, and have a safe way of getting to and from the venue.
We actually had a wedding this most recent January where the venue that our couple was booked their January wedding for was literally at the top of the mountain. The driveway leading up to this kind of mountaintop vineyard was over a mile long. It was a single lane road, gravel, hairpin turns, like steep incline. It was just absolutely nuts. And of course, it snowed and iced the day before the wedding. So luckily, we own a 4-wheel drive vehicle and feel comfortable driving in the snow. So we felt comfortable getting to the venue. But if that's not the case for you and there's going to be snow on the ground heading to a wedding day, make sure, one, you know how you're going to actually get there safely. And two, that you allot a ton of extra time so that you can drive safely on the way there.
Yeah, and for your reference, for that January wedding, that venue is about 30 minutes away from us. And because it snowed the night before and froze the night before their wedding, it actually took us over an hour to get to the vineyard. And we have our 4-wheel drive vehicle. So if you don't have 4-wheel drive, allot even more time.
Or just don't drive if you're not comfortable with that. But find someone who can drive you. But tip number 3 is how to protect yourself from the cold on a freezing wedding day.
Yeah. If it looks like it is going to be absolutely bitter cold, but your couple is still game for going outside to do some natural light portraits and just do it for as long as they can handle, then you need to prepare and just layer up. Since you'll probably be moving from indoor to outdoor throughout the day, layering is going to be key for you. You'll want to have layers that you can easily shed when you go back inside to prevent you from, sweating. This is both, not ideal. You don't want to sweat anyways, but it can also be dangerous if you go from sweating inside to immediately back outside and you freeze when you move back outside. So you want to make sure that whatever layers you're wearing also won't interfere with whatever camera straps you use.
And then another thing is actually that is really important. Maybe this is so specific to photography, right? But you need to keep your fingers warm. You need to still be able to use your fingers and have the dexterity while, keeping them warm. So for Sarah, she really needs to feel the buttons on her camera, very tactile, which, so for Sarah, she wears fingerless gloves on a wedding day. Whereas for me, I have poor circulation. So I'm a huge baby when it goes, when we go out in the cold. So I actually have a pair of really thick leather fleece-lined gloves, and I wear those when we're outside.
Yeah, and also if snow is in the forecast, you want to make sure that your outermost layer is not only warm, but it's also waterproof.
Yeah.
While that heavy pea coat looks super nice, it's going to be just like a soggy, wet mess with all that snow falling on it.
And kind of along that same line, if there is snow in the forecast, you want to make sure whatever you have on your feet is not just warm, but is also waterproof, right? The last thing you want is to walk around all day with wet, soggy feet below freezing. It is just not a good combination. Right. And of course you can have a pair of, just ugly, whatever, snow boots, whatever, wear them during the portrait portion of the day when you are in and out, and then put on something that's a little more comfortable or a little more professional. Once the portrait part of the day is done, the sun has gone down, and you're just going to spend the rest of the day inside anyway, you can then change out of your wet shoes and maybe, hopefully not, but maybe your soggy socks as well.
Yeah, never feel guilty about rolling up to a wedding with a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, extra clothes, extra outfit. Sometimes you just got to do it.
Yeah. Tip number 4 is how to protect your gear on a cold wedding day.
So this is a pretty short segment because technically cold isn't really going to harm your camera gear. However, and you may have noticed this with your iPhone before, most electronics will start to slow down if they are out in the cold for too long. So the last thing you want is to be take a picture and your camera's okay, there we go. So basically just don't leave your camera outside or don't spend any more time outside with your cameras on you than you have to. But going in and out, other than maybe fogging up your lenses a little bit the first couple times, usually it's not really going to affect your gear all that much.
And of course, again, if it's going to be actively snowing while you're shooting outside, refer back to all of our tips for a rainy wedding day blog because the snow will melt as soon as it hits your beautiful warm camera, and you do not want to have a wet camera.
Yeah. And finally, our last tip, and this is just like on every wedding day you shoot, be flexible and be ready to serve your couple.
Yeah, we had to put all of these tactics into practice this past January during B and Chris's snowy mountaintop wedding that we mentioned earlier. Like we said before, you know, we own a 4-wheel drive vehicle and we're comfortable driving in the snow, so getting to the top of the mountain wasn't too much of an issue for us. But the majority of the wedding guests and the other vendors were not quite so lucky. So the groom and his best man spent almost 3 hours shuttling up people who didn't have 4-wheel drive vehicles up in their 4-wheel drive vehicles up and down the mountain. And all of this overlapped with the photography timeline.
So we arrived, found out this was happening, and basically we just pivoted and we were as flexible as possible. We adjusted the timeline on the fly. We ended up scrapping the first look. We moved the ceremony back by almost an hour after, you know, because he was just still driving up and down the mountain. We still managed to squeeze in a few getting ready photos as he's changed from his, like, you know, snow outfit into his suit for our groom, but we just kind of made it work, right? We, when everyone was finally up the mountain and safe and the ceremony started, we just kind of like sprang into action and, just worked as quickly and as efficiently as possible.
Yeah, and, I was stretching my hand. So that day was also only 28 degrees and it got even colder, you know, as that sun went down or if you stood in the shade. So we ended up breaking up their portraits into 2 smaller chunks. One, you know, right after the ceremony before their cocktail hour, and then one right at the end of cocktail hour before they jumped into their reception. We even experimented with a few indoor portraits. So we just also as warmly as we could, and we were just kind of ready for anything.
We had gotten from them that they kind of more wanted to prioritize staying warm with a few portraits. So we ended up doing, you know, all their family photos, like all of that inside. And that's also why we only did maybe like 2 little 10 to 15 minute chunks outside. We didn't bother with in and out. We just went out, shot some photos, went in, and we're done for a while. But that was what they were expecting from us. So in the end, B and Chris were just absolutely thrilled with their final image gallery, and they left us this great review online, just despite all of the like craziness and hecticness of what that wedding day felt like. We just, you know, prepared as well as we could. We adjusted as we went and did everything we could to love and serve them well on their wedding day. And now it is your turn to go and do the same for your couples.
So that's it for this week.
Thank you guys so much for watching. We really do hope that this has helped you as you think about and prepare for, you know, your upcoming cold wedding day.
Yeah, and again, if you haven't already, we really, really encourage you to join our Facebook community, Mastering the Wedding Photography Biz with Hunter and Sarah. In that group, we're building a community of photographers who are also building their photography businesses and helping each other out along the way. So let us help you.
Yeah, and so in a couple of weeks, we are going to continue kind of one final standalone video. It's not going to be about weather this time. And then next month, we're going to be diving back into kind of a weekly series.
Yeah, there's no reason to do like a what to do on a beautiful, perfect weather.
Yeah, right.
But if you found this video helpful, if you have any questions, or if you'd like to add anything that you think we missed, go ahead and feel free to comment below. And yeah, that's it. Thanks, guys.
See you guys in a few weeks.